Hello, everyone. Hey, all the lovers of good identity. And I'm so excited that you are here because you know who are here also. Here is our guest. Here is George Lavender, and he is from the best identity studio in the world. And I'm sure you could argue with me, but I'm sure that they do the best identity. Okay, we will figure out only digital identity or all identity, but visual communication is the best from their hands. And just not to lose your time, because I know that you don't like, because you see me so many times for this week and for the previous times. That's why I just want to introduce you, George. George, hello. Tell us more about you. What do you do at Collins? And so what are your hobbies and everything about you? Everything is interesting for us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. So my name is George Lavender. I'm a design director at Collins in New York. And I've been with Collins for just over a year now. So working with the teams on, leading design projects on brand and identity. Previously to Collins, I was at Mother Design in New York. And then previous to that, I was in London, obviously not American. So I worked in London for 5 years before I moved over to the States and found my way to Collins eventually, which I'm very excited about and can't wait to talk to you today.
Cool. Thank you so much for this introduction. So let's start with the fact that your works are awesome. Your works, the studio works, so we just know that. So could you tell us more? Where do you get an inspiration to make it happen?
Yeah, of course. I think for us, a great idea always starts with a great strategy, and that's something that is incredibly important to us at Collins. Just as much as the design, I think kind of a beautiful design is a little bit empty and lacks meaning without a real story. So we really start with that story. And the way we kind of figure out that story is through what we call a discover phase. So that will be essentially our strategy team will kind of get to know our clients and the brand like really inside and out. And they do that through obviously lots of research, but also just lots of conversations like we're having today. And I think through getting to know the people at the company and the brand, that really helps us to figure out what is true to them and what is the right story for them to tell. And I think that is, from a design perspective, we get a lot of our inspiration from that story. We're always trying to think, how can we bring that to life visually? And I think it's the combination of that strategic foundation that allows us to create a really kind of compelling design and visual identity that just feels right. I think a lot of our clients come to us and they're like, no one's ever, understood me like this, and no one, like, I never knew that, we could look like this. So I think it all starts with that initial phase, which we put so much significance on.
So the chemistry is really important to find this like bond between.
Exactly, yeah, and it's also it really helps to have great clients too who care about the companies that they're leading and the work that those companies are doing. I think as soon as you have kind of one component, like you said, that if the chemical imbalance between organization and kind of people on their side is a little bit off, then you'll start to feel it. But I think, through conversation and getting to know people is where we find our ideas.
Cool. We'll get back to the clients, that I have these questions, and we will maybe even you will show us some works. And before we will go to the next question, I will ask our audience, please don't be shy and please text your questions. We have limited time today, but still we will be glad to read the most relevant and the most interesting questions. So it's your chance. So let's start with the digital identity in general. What is the difference between digital and analog identity or communication?
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more these days, we're being asked to focus on digital identities because we're dealing a lot with these digitally native brands and tech brands. So I'd say really in like the most recent time and in my time at Collins, the focus has been kind of entirely on that digital side. But then there's kind of a really interesting tension and challenge in that, because the way that kind of people are used to interacting with visual communication and with brands and advertising is out in the real world, and it's kind of through tangible experiences. And I think, this last year throughout the pandemic as well, it's like brands have been trying to find ways to innovate and kind of connect and really speak to their audience in a way that is entirely digital and where they're not out in the real world. So it's a very kind of interesting challenge and situation that we're in moving forward. So I think I see us kind of, pushing, it's almost like we're going to go full circle at some point and push digital brands as far, as we can, until we start coming back to all of these techniques that we used in sort of printed and branded identities, and I think it's going to be a really kind of interesting path to go down, and I'm excited to do it. I mean, yeah, it's been a little while since I've printed anything personally, but yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the clients and to the projects. How do you find such great clients as Twitch, Airbnb, Spotify, MailChimp, and other? And could you name some specific points of work with such giants of the industries?
Yeah, I think so. Really, it was kind of like a snowball effect. Like obviously, Brian Collins coming from Ogilvy and then setting up his own studio, and I think initially having some clients to work on, but I think it really just kind of, it snowballed from like one to another, and a lot of the work that we do, it kind of comes from one project and then another project. So it's kind of, we see every single project as another new business opportunity. So essentially, we're constantly pushing ourselves for a project, because then we know that case study, once it goes up on our site, is going to get us so much more business. Like Spotify is a piece of work that went live 7 years ago, and we still have other companies coming to us being like, oh, we love the work that you did for Spotify. So we're in a really fortunate position where we're able to work with these brands and then have kind of organically other brands see that out in the world, and they're like, I want that, I want those people, I want that studio, so we're really fortunate for that in that respect. I would say though that then does us a disservice in some ways, because then you have people saying like, I want Spotify, and we're like, well, we've done that, we don't want to do that again. We want to always innovate and kind of experiment and try new ideas, different techniques, ways we can communicate.
Do you feel some limits when you work with some giants? Like, well, because as I understand that if the company is huge, so definitely they have some restrictions. Do you feel like?
I think that's a really interesting question. Honestly, that is the thing that really drew me to Collins, and why I wanted to come and work here, is that, like you said, the caliber and the sort of the reach of the work is so huge. Like that, the brands are household names and they're global brands, yet the kind of the craft in the work and the level of thinking and the ideas is always so wildly different, and it always has like such a strong point of view. So I was personally very fascinated by, like you're saying, like I had this preconception, like the bigger the client gets, the kind of the harder it is to be creative and try something that you might think is a little bit daring or different. But I always saw you know, that Collins was able to really push this work. And I think there is a level of trust that our clients have with us, and that comes, like I said, right from the beginning, of really getting to know them, developing a bond and this trust. And then by following us on the journey, there's never kind of any limitation or surprise. They're always kind of there with us every step of the way, and willing to push with us. So yeah, I expected there to be limits, but seemingly we're able to push past them, which is great.
Cool. We have the question from the audience, which is, I guess that it's quite interesting. What kind of experience and portfolio is likely to get a job at Collins? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, I think what we look for in a portfolio is obviously, first and foremost, a very high level of craft. So good design sensibilities, strong skill with typography, but also being able to think through systems of identity. So it's more than just beautiful symbols or crafted logo types. We really look for how kind of a nucleus of an idea can be translated across every touch point that a brand might have. So I think it's a combination really of the craft and then the ability to translate that across all of the different applications. And I think that also comes with some sense and understanding of strategy as well, and being able to constantly tie your work to ideas and explain it. But I mean, I think personally that kind of the craft and the skill in design, to me, is like, I want to say it's the easiest kind of thing to find, but sometimes it's more the thinking, the strategic component is the thing that we sometimes find is lacking. So I think that's like the one thing that I would recommend.
Cool. Cool. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
getting back to the clients, we have one question from Yuri. Are you happy with how your clients are using their style or identity you have developed? What would you change? Do you feel that they're using the identity badly? Maybe the wrong pictures are picked up or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another really great question, and like something that we're often talking about internally. I think there are cases when, for example, you know, I worked on the rebrand of Medium, and that team has a really great internal design team. So when we were kind of handing over assets and the project, we were able to onboard their designers and kind of help them in sort of the implementation of the visual identity system that we made. So I find that when you work with a big brand such as Medium or even Robinhood, like someone that has a really great internal design team, then the rollout is usually much smoother than some of the smaller brands. What we try to do with the smaller brands is build toolkits that make it easier. So knowing that they don't have a full staff team of designers, I think there's kind of a, you have to adjust the system that you're trying to create for different companies. I think it's not like the same kind of scale and approach to applications can work for such big companies and such small companies, because you know, we might make the most beautiful visual identity system in the world, and there could be a 4-person team sat there like, well, great, we can't, you know, we can't implement this ourselves. So I think, yeah, just being more conscious of what you're expecting of the client is often more helpful in that way.
Cool. Thank you so much. We had the question from the audience, which sounds like, which stage of identity creation takes the most time? But also I want to add my own question, because I guess that it's part of it. Could you tell us more about the structure of your company and how do you work on the project? So what are the stages? So what are the most hard stages? What are the hardest? What are the easiest? And what takes the most, like more people or everything?
Yeah, well, so as I mentioned before, the initial phase is all about discovery. So that's mainly for strategists to work on in sort of immersion and research. And then we have, after that is after we get to a sort of a synthesis of a discovery phase is when design teams will start to be briefed. And then the design teams will sort of take the strategic platform that we've created and start to, again, just sort of do their own discovery phase in a way. It's like we kind of have these different stages where it's like you're discovering, you're going like far and wide, you synthesize, and then design starts, you go far and wide again, and then you start to synthesize as you develop into directions. But I think the thing that takes the most time is, usually that initial design phase, because you have essentially, a piece of paper which outlines this story. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I want to bring this to life? And, we usually start with visual provocations and sketches. So we'll all kind of get together. I mean, and we used to do this on boards, but now we do it on Figma and just throw in kind of references, quick sketches, ideas, maybe more writing. And we just like to make that part of the process really messy. So that really, that is the part that it takes the most time, but it's also the most fun, I think, because really anything is possible at this stage. And we haven't, shared anything with the clients. So we're just all kind of getting excited and bouncing off each other and throwing ideas in there. And that kind of phase will typically last for like around 4 weeks or so. So that's like average, obviously varies on scale of project. And then we usually try and, kind of tidy that up a little bit before we expose it to clients, but especially since we've been handling presentations remotely, we like to include clients a little bit more. So there isn't that much of a big reveal moment. Like we really are showing them the process and like giving them a peek behind the curtain into kind of the craziness. I think we've learned that kind of, again, it helps that trust as you come along the journey and there being no kind of big reveals or surprises. So we'll show them different ideas, things we're excited about, and just kind of get reactions from them. And then usually based on those reactions is where we can start to be like, okay, let's start to formalize design directions or concepts. And that typically, again, like on average, we would do 3 different directions per project. And at minimum 2, I think you always want to have something different that someone can react to. We'd never go in with like just one and say, ta-da, like this is it, because then we're not giving our clients a choice, and we really like to collaborate and involve them. So by giving them minimum 2, usually 3, that allows for discussion, and we can start to then formalize everything into kind of one direction together. So that's like kind of the typical sort of process.
Cool. And how different are these 3 different ways? Because I heard a few stories of some cool studios or even small studios. They believe that they should give just one, because before that they did a lot of work. So they are sure that they investigated everything. So they are sure that they find the right way. So yeah, how different should be these 3 ways?
I think based on the kind of visual provocations and sketches phase, we'll get a sense of what different areas our clients may be interested in. And then I would say that we do usually try to make them feel like 3 fairly different things, but all three of these directions are still based off of one strategy. So spiritually and conceptually, they have a similar feeling. It's just visually they'll translate it in a different way, or they'll kind of communicate a different tone through different typography, or maybe they'll kind of have a different mood based on the color palette that we're trying to use, or maybe one has an illustration style and another is just all about photography. We look for different ways to try and push them apart a little bit.
Cool. Thank you so much. Before we will move forward, I would like to ask all the people who watch us, please, if you like our conversation, please press like, just for those people who walk by internet, by YouTube, and they will see that it's a cool conversation and they will join us and they will write their questions as well. But I want to move forward, and maybe it will be not just the answer by your words, but maybe you will show us, because I want to talk about some of the projects, and they are so different, and all of them have their uniqueness, I guess. So how do you reach that? And maybe you can show us something, and maybe some of your favorite projects or something.
Yeah. I mean, I can show you.
Cool.
Some of the projects. So as I said, I've been at Collins for just over a year now. So there's two main projects that I have published on the site. Medium was the first one. So I can just kind of go through and give you a little bit of an overview and kind of what the thinking was. Obviously, Medium, if you're not aware, is a publishing platform.
Yep.
And really the focus was on independent thinking, and also just bringing different ideas to the table. So sort of reinventing the idea of what a news platform could be. We developed a new symbol for them, which you can see here. So it's based on an ellipsis. So in punctuation, obviously, ellipsis is used to kind of allude to there's more to the story, like there's more to be heard. So we saw it as kind of a shorthand way for what it is that Medium offers you. It's really giving you more to the story, as well as being abstractly representative of an M with the three circles there. And we wanted to capture it in this state of motion too. We wanted it to not feel static. We wanted it to be as if it was kind of moving through perspective.
Cool. I didn't see M before, so now I see it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we like to bring in just small little details or kind of Easter eggs. You know, it's like it's not the primary read of the symbol. The idea is the ellipsis, but the M is a nice kind of foundation there. It should have a little animation there too. Sorry, I did test this as well.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, and then for the illustration style, because Medium, their currency is words. So we built everything out of typography. And then again, talking about the first and the second read, there being these two layers. So obviously kind of the first layer is you see this cube moving through space, but then if you read it, it says read more perspectives, which is a headline for the company.
Cool.
I just developed a layout and editorial system, again, using the symbol in different abstractive ways with these kind of large bullets. It was also an interesting project because they're a content platform. It had to kind of feel like it could work with all these different styles of imagery and illustration too. So it would feel, very diverse. These are just more examples of the illustrations that we made. And then, so the one on the left with the quotation mark is kind of highlighting a lot of the different well-known writers and speakers they have on their platform. And then on the right-hand side, just featuring all the different kinds of topics that you might read about.
Cool.
So yeah, this is kind of the core idea of the symbol and the word mark. The word mark is very much an evolution of where they were as well. That was something that they wanted to not completely change. The addition of the symbol was sort of the main focus, but typographically, we just wanted to elevate the overall experience and make it feel a little bit more premium than what it did previously. We also helped them redesign their website. So this is just going through some of the different about pages. So obviously, if you go to the website, it's very functional and it's about the stories, but for the section where it talks about membership information or come join us as a writer, or just the actual story of Medium, there we wanted to give it a lot more personality and the flavor of Medium.
It's so tough to create such crazy identity for so many people, because I'm sure that they have so many clients who use every day. Because I read really regular, I read Medium, and I'm sure that a lot of people who watch us today, so they used to read it maybe even every day. So it was quite tough to change the logo, to change the website, to change everything. They're quite brave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and especially they're a brand that has had a few kind of rebrands in the years previously, so it was definitely something that people reacted to. But I think everyone that we kind of worked with on the client side, they're such a great team, and I think they were all really, really proud of the work. And as I said, their in-house design team is really great too. And I think all the work that they've been doing, with the website and also with their other kind of content platforms like Instagrams, is looking really great.
Cool. By the way, about in-house designers, because we have the question, it was previously texted. So how do you collaborate with in-house design teams? Do you bring some MVP ideas and develop them, or kind of brainstorm together from scratch?
Yeah, I think to use Medium again as an example, just because we're here, we obviously went about our typical process with the visual identity, but then we had kind of smaller breakout sessions with their design team as we were starting to implement. So after the identity and the system and the idea and the story had kind of been sold into their leadership team, we then sort of did, I think it was a couple times a week for a few weeks, we did onboarding sessions. So it's meeting like the brand team, the web team, the mobile team, taking them through the guidelines and the system, and just really listening to any kind of questions or other thoughts they may have, and then just taking on any feedback that they might have about certain things within the guidelines, so that we can kind of work together to create a system that they feel really confident, that gives them the flexibility.
Cool. And one more question from the audience, because it's about Medium, so I guess that it's quite relevant. Okay. Medium changed an identity several times, as you said, in relative short time. What was the problem with the last identity, and why did the client decide to change it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, what they wanted to do is they were kind of internally reshaping their business, and I think they wanted to elevate the brand as they wanted to move into more like different tiers of subscription models. So I think they wanted to kind of kind of evolve the brand to signal that, but also I think, yeah, I think once they kind of, from the phase of being a startup to where we are now, that I think they've had maybe two, three or four, but this was kind of their attempt at really putting their stake in the ground. And I think they knew what was working for them with the identity, what wasn't working with them. I think from the previous identity where they really struggled, and this is what I talked, you know, a lot about, with actually being able to roll out and implement a system beyond it just being a nice idea. Their previous kind of graphic language system revolved a lot around these collages, and it was almost like different kind of cuttings from newspapers kind of like layered on top of each other. And I think they just found that to be a very impractical technique that just took their teams a lot of time. So if they had a new story to highlight or a new feature or something, and then, you know, they had to roll it out tomorrow, it was like they had to kind of break their backs to get something made. So they really wanted a system that was much quicker, but still had the energy. So by creating all these illustrations with typography, you know, we sort of gave them a library of initial ones to make, but they've been making their own since then based on the techniques that we established with them. So, and it's, you know, it's a much quicker thing just to be able to type out some sentences or some words that relates to your story, and then create a simple image and kind of work with the type in that way.
Cool, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I can keep going through this. So this kind of showcases some more of the illustration style and how it can be used to support photography as well as just being standalone illustration. This just showcases some of the typography. So kind of something you might see as a writer, something you might see as a reader. More of the illustrations again. So they really just take very simple shapes. And then they have much smaller illustrations they use on the website, which they call spot illustrations. So for those, we just used the M from the name medium to create these more abstract forms that they could use in a way of iconography. Yeah, and this just gives you a feel for more of the product with the daily newsletter. So we just kind of retypeset this using our new font. It's the example of guidelines. More of the guidelines and that symbol animation. And this just showcases our color palette too.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's medium. I could go through and talk about Match as well if you like, and then any more questions?
Definitely. We really like to watch pictures, because I'm sure that there are so many graphic designers are watching us. So I'm sure that they really want to not only to watch the pictures, because definitely they saw all of your projects, but for sure they want to hear all the ideas and all of the way of thinking which is standing behind it. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I can definitely do that. Yeah, so the second main project that I was focused on was the Match identity. So obviously Match as a dating service has been around for 25 years now. So really at the forefront of the category. And I think, you know, in the beginning, they were much more known as Match.com. And then over time, they dropped that because, you know, they have the mobile app. And I think really they came to us because, as I said, you know, they sort of established themselves as a leader within a category. And then a lot of other more kind of youthful dating apps have come to the fore in Hinge and Tinder and Bumble. So really what they wanted to do again was sort of reestablish themselves and again just like make a name for themselves, but also just kind of confidently emerge as Match and lose kind of the Match.com. One of the main things we did here with the wordmark, besides a complete kind of typographic overhaul, but at least in terms of the concept, the original wordmark had the heart more arbitrarily placed in the upper right-hand corner, and we wanted to shift it down to the baseline so it acts as a period. It's much more confident and declarative and gives it a purpose. We also then, I can sort of scroll to somewhere to show you, implemented it within our typography. So this typeface that we gave them, we customized so that the period is a heart. So whenever you type a sentence, it always ends with a heart.
Cool.
So that's like another interesting way that we sort of took our thinking from the logo and put it into the rest of the brand. Obviously, typographically, it's very different from where they were, and they really wanted to feel the way we spoke about it was like the grown-up in the room, you know, with like Tinder and Hinge being very youthful and millennial, but bringing Match into the modern day, but without contemporizing it in a youthful way, still doing it in a very elegant way that like better suits their audience.
But I heard, by the way, you are talking about this dot at the end, which is hard, but still. What do you like? I heard that new millennials, not millennials, but Generation Z. What is the current
Gen Z,
generation? So they hate when there is the dot at the end of the sentence. Did you hear that or not? Because I heard that they hate it and they understand that this sentence is too rude. So it means that they feel.
Oh, like yeah, like when you're texting and it's like very rude. Just I kind of get that.
So it didn't stop you.
No, not at all. I mean, the primary kind of focus really of this sort of audience is more for like. It's much more of a 25 to 50 than it is like an 18 to 25. It's definitely focused more on, you know, people that are kind of looking for that. They're either looking for, you know, that second relationship or the real deal. There's like much more of an idea of commitment and less just kind of messing around. The color palette as well, we really wanted to avoid using flat colors, but at the same time, we didn't want kind of there to be these like very saturated gradients. I think like gradients are so ubiquitous within tech, but they're always like very vibrant. So kind of here we wanted to create like a very subtle gradation that you almost wouldn't notice at first, but it just gives you that feeling of light and of a real room and a real space rather than just like a flat color.
Cool. Yeah, it's really smooth. We have the question from the audience, and I guess that it's quite relevant here, and also because you have really cool work. So being one of the best, where do you find references and how do you work with them?
Well, I mean, we have a really good library at Collins, which I'm missing a lot now that we're remote. But usually when we work on projects, sitting in the library is a great place to find references. A lot of conversations and calls with Brian end up with him being like, "Oh, I have this great book. I'm gonna send it to you." So a lot of moments like that. We use arena boards a lot to kind of collaborate on references and ideas. But I think, we really try to find our references. I think it's like so tricky, especially when you're remote, to get stuck in the echo chamber of the internet and just kind of be in a scroll hole looking for the right kind of reference image. So I think we really try to yeah, either look through books or I think Arena is good for that. I mean, I think Pinterest is like a worse culprit just because of the algorithm they've developed to kind of constantly serve you these things. So I think it's quite easy to tell if you've kind of seen that thing before because it keeps coming back up. But I think there are still a lot of good sources. I mean, I follow just a lot of obscure Tumblr blogs. I find they're more valuable than something like Pinterest, like being able to find references on there. And we usually try and reference more historic examples of art and design than modern. I think anything kind of within the past 20 years, we don't often like to reference. I think for like Match in particular, we referenced a lot of film actually, and movies and titles of romantic films and just films even from the noir period, and just like really thinking about the romanticism of movies and just the titles that you might find within those. So we looked a lot at things like that for Match. We also looked a lot at the Deco period, sort of in transition between Nouveau and Deco, but we were looking at our sort of strategic idea and role for the brand was more of a concierge. We wanted to think of them like, because Match does a lot of work for its customers behind the scenes in order to actually match them with that perfect person. So we looked more into hospitality and hotels, and that led us to kind of the grand old hotels of the Deco period. So yeah, those are like a few things that we looked at for like this project specifically.
Cool. One more question from the audience. I guess that it's really cool as well. What's the proportion of intuition versus research in Colin's works? I guess that intuition, it means like talent maybe. Yeah? So intuition versus research.
Oh, I see. Okay. So between just kind of, right, got it. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, that's like that's a good question. It's like a very hard one to quantify, but I think, yeah, usually for me and like how my intuition and thinking works, I find that time away from the screen and just thinking about a project or an idea or writing about it or just kind of doodling or even kind of doing something completely irrelevant helps me to get that space. So I think definitely there's like a really healthy balance of like how much you just kind of you go off and you look and you research. But I think for me, I kind of, once I'm focused on a project, I carry it with me a lot throughout the day, and I'm often thinking about it, or I'll see something on the street and I'll take a picture, and that will kind of help me form an idea. So I think it's really just about having like a curiosity. I think it's almost less about intuition. It's more about curiosity. I think if you go about your day with this just constant childlike mind of like wonder and curiosity, then you'll continue to find ideas in unexpected places.
Cool. I totally agree with you because I do the same, and I understand that what does it mean to be curious. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just some more examples of the logo type. We also, with this brand, we wanted to go beyond just showcasing people. And I think we found it interesting to show moments of intimacy, not only in through the human touch, but we were also looking at tableaus of kind of old like Baroque oil paintings, and that kind of inspired things like this. Like we wanted the overall tone of this to feel very kind of like romantic and moody. So that's why we looked to include all of these other elements and kind of props here. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of fun making this case study. This pair of pears is a particular favorite of mine.
We have a cool question, quite long, but I will try to read it.
Yeah.
Since in 2021, digital is one of the main, sometimes the only touch point that consumer interacts with the brand while working on a new identity, do you think of it at the forefront? And if yes, how does it influence your decisions as a brand designer? And also, at which stage do you bring digital team into the process?
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on the project, like a digital team. So for example, all my videos are disappearing, sorry. So for example, something like this, where we're looking at onboarding screens. Just one sec.
They were there.
So the digital team at Match, we partnered with throughout the process, but again, it was more towards the end. See something like this. So we redesigned the initial onboarding experience with their digital team. So once we had established a toolkit, I think it's very important to like figure out what all the pieces are before you start to put them together, right? It's like you can't like you can't make a puzzle if you don't know what your pieces are. So really we had to go through that process of understanding what our logo type was, what our typefaces were, what our color palette was, and also just what the general feeling was. Like we just wanted to create a very seamless and fluid experience. But I think a lot of this experience is as much about the language as it is about the design. It's about talking to someone, you know, person to person, less like a tech brand. So in places it can get a little bit longer than some other onboarding experiences where it's a bit more functional, but we really wanted this to feel like that concierge and like another person is behind it talking to you. So that's kind of how we would work with something like a digital team. Yeah. I'm not sure I answered the first part of the question. Like, what was the first part of the question again?
Like, I guess that nowadays, everything, all the brands, they should have at least something digital. And you are like the brand designer. How do you feel that? So there is that. So since in 2025, 21st, digital is one of the main, sometimes the only touch point that consumer interacts with the brand while working on a new identity. Do you think of it at the forefront? And if yes, how does it influence your decisions as a brand designer?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. I think both of these projects' primary applications were very much digital. So yeah, we almost now we have to consider digital before print. So it's a consideration when you get to a stage of thinking about a design system or implementing and rolling out guidelines. I think the kind of the bare essentials and the toolkit where we're focusing on things like a logo type or a symbol or typography and color, I think all of those things we would establish, you know, the same regardless. I think those things are really based on the feeling that we want the brand to evoke, whether they're doing that digitally or printed. I think the feeling is often the same.
Cool. Thank you. I know that you should run. That's why the last question, and I guess that it was also from the audience, and I like it. I hate to talk about the future, but I guess that it's quite cool to just to imagine. So how long do you think you will be working as a designer or art director, etc.? What should designers do in 50 years? Imagine yourself at 50 in a team with young professionals.
Wow.
I was sure that you would like this question as well.
It's a crazy one to think about. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been in my career now for about 10 years. I think, yeah, I would like to see myself still as a designer in another 10 years. Who knows exactly like where that will be, but I think, yeah, I mean, I got into this career for the idea that there would be a constant challenge and diversity to what I'm doing. I love this feeling that, you know, right now I'm working on something, but in a month it might be a completely different project for a completely different type of client in a completely different sector, and I might get to learn about a whole, you know, new, bizarre, different type of kind of sector that I had no idea about. And, you know, I'm here speaking to you as well. So I love that it just like, it's very surprising. It pulls me in different directions. I think it goes back to what I was saying about curiosity. I love this idea that what we're lucky enough to do is constantly changing. And I think like we've seen that so much as we've been talking about digital identity versus printed identity. And I could only imagine like, you know, how much it's changed in even the last 5 years, how much it will change in 10, 20, 50 years. So I think like the unknown of that and the ability to kind of, yeah, be there to figure it out and kind of experiment with all of those things really excites me.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for all our guests who watched us today. I'm sorry because some people were disappointed that we don't have the translation, but we said that it will be in English. So sorry for that. Shit happens. So it's the only thing which I could say. So thank you so much, George. So thank you. Really, it was really exciting, and I didn't know that you did Medium. So I showed to my friends this project, and I really like this new logo because there was so many conversation around it, but I was on your side. So now I met you. So it was so cool. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and it was exciting.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.